Welcome to the Sports Pen on Penn TV. I'm your host, Fred Bear. Joining me today are Olympic Taekwondo gold medalist Herb Perez and former San Mateo Times sports editor John Horgan. John also chairs the Peninsula Sports Hall of Fame Committee. On today's episode of Sports Pen, we'll talk about the need for sports facilities on the Peninsula, and we'll meet one of this year's Peninsula Sports Hall of Fame inductees, Randy Metheany. Welcome to our panel here, John Horgan and Herb Perez, and we're going to talk a little bit on this show about the need for sports facilities here on the Peninsula and some of the voids we have. Herb, why don't you take us off here and tell us a little bit what the problem is and issue.
Well, you know, California has fantastic weather, and as a result of having fantastic weather, a lot of our sports occur outdoors and in fact, can occur year-round. Mm-hmm. One of the differences around the rest of the country, though, is that they accommodate the bad weather with indoor sport facilities. And so for the longest time here, it seems that there is a shortage of indoor sport facilities that would both enhance the experience of the athletes, but more importantly, develop grassroots athletes in areas where we normally wouldn't.
And in spite of the fact that we don't have enough to start with, there's a lot of talk now about the problems in losing things like our ice rinks at Bridgepoint and the Belmont Iceland.
Well, these are exacerbated by the financial considerations. So one of the considerations, obviously, is San Mateo is going through its own internal battle with its planning commission and the city on what they want to do with that ice rink. And then on the heels of that, the Belmont made a financial decision, the Belmont ice rink, to close and to allow it to be developed into a different use. The challenge with the Belmont facility is that it is not a public facility, nor was it a part of a public promise. So they're free to do what they want. But with the loss of those two fantastic facilities, you're now losing children that do those winter-type sports just for recreation, but more importantly, perhaps in a grassroots pipeline that might lead to an Olympic berth.
And John, so what direction should we be looking at? What possibilities do we have?
Well, again, San Mateo County has a huge problem. The value of the land is so incredibly high that it makes it very tough to duplicate what's happening in places like Pleasanton and Orange County in Southern California, where land is a little cheaper. Well, it's a lot cheaper in Orange County, and they have facilities, for example, out in industrial zones, these huge warehouse sporting complexes where they'll have 13 basketball courts, volleyball courts, 13, 14 of them in this massive complex. And they can do it because the land is much cheaper. So we do have an issue here.
They also have, and I've seen it in the planned community like Mission Viejo, which is on a grand scale a lot like Foster City, but grand scale was the difference. So they've developed all those sports complexes, including a national championship swimming pool that I've done events at, compared to like Foster City. And Herb, is the mayor of Foster City, is dealing with it from as a political standpoint too. The fact we have really no indoor facilities in Foster City to speak of whatsoever. The high school district never built the stuff they planned to because of various reasons, and Foster City didn't build them on their own. We have great, in Foster City, outdoor facilities and nothing indoors, and actually the Bridgepoint ice rink was probably the closest indoor facility, and that's now gone.
I mean, the question you have to ask yourself is, to what degree does the public and the private entities want to work together to find a solution? Mm-hmm. There's a direct correlation between academics and athletics, and that's known. So when you have these opportunities to create partnerships that will yield an athletic facility that will both provide grassroots development for athletes, life skill development for young athletes that are going on to college, but more importantly, become ingrained in the fabric of the community, I think you have an affirmative obligation to do that. Most recently, hearing about this, I met with Douglas Kim, and I met with Joe Gothos to talk about this challenge and to see if there was a way that we could cooperate regionally as a public entity.
2 city councilmen from Belmont and San Mateo.
Right, and the mayor of San
San
Mateo.
Mateo.
And so we've started that discussion. It's a little premature to talk about what might or could occur, but I wanted to at least reach out a hand and say, listen, we're looking at this regionally in other areas. Why aren't we looking at them for sport facilities? An excellent example of a sport facility that is privatized are Big League Dreams. They create facilities for softball, soccer, and baseball in these communities, and then they build them for the community. The city donates the land or sells them the land. And over a period of 5 or 10 years, those things are then sold back to the very sport entities that use them. It's a great public-private partnership, and I think there are opportunities for that in Foster City, quite frankly, and certainly in San Mateo, regardless of the land cost. But it's going to need creative financing. It's going to need partnership by public individuals and private individuals, but more importantly, from the community as a whole to understand that the importance of academics and athletics are intertwined.
John?
One of the big public facilities that is really underutilized is the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace is not just the huge 14,000-seat arena. They also have ancillary buildings right next door where they have exhibitions. They'll have the gun show, for example. Those buildings are quite large. They're
The livestock arenas, they help with the rodeos they used to have there, right?
They're almost like warehouse type buildings. I could see visionary people along the peninsula saying, you know, we could actually transform some of that into what Herb's talking about. I'm not sure it'll ever happen. I think it's the state of California that controls it. Right?
It's in San Mateo County in Daly City, but it's a state-owned facility, and it's interesting. And I've done a lot of events there back in the days when we had indoor track meets, which we don't have anymore. We don't have an indoor track anywhere around here.
Right.
But that's the Cow Palace in San Mateo County was the major indoor track facility in Northern California.
Wow.
The Examiner Games were there. That's all past, of course.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget the economic impact that these events have on the community. So when you hold these multi-sport events, or you hold one sport and you bring these championships to it, it has a dramatic impact on the TOT tax that it's had at hotels, on restaurant sales, and basically just on people in the community, and the businesses thrive from it. So when we look at these events, and we tried to bring an event here, but the venues at the San Mateo Convention Center were a little small for our Junior Olympics. Our Junior Olympics holds about 5,000 competitors. It has about a $25 million impact to the local community. And forget about the hotel rooms, because those 5,000 children bring their entire family with them. So it's an amazing event, and we hold them in big convention centers around the country. We had tried to bring it here, and actually it ended up at the San Jose Convention Center. But I would love to see that happen here. I think there's some tremendous opportunities down on Burlingame, along the riverside, on the water side, on the bay side, that I think would be a fantastic place to see this happen. But again, it's going to take buy-in from the community. It's going to take creative financing, and it's going to take a regional effort by the communities that would understand the impact to the community, but more importantly, the impact to those young children and families.
And we also have the event center in San Mateo.
Would you see something like the Convention and Visitors Bureau perhaps being a lead agency to bring people together? I'm not sure how that would work.
They are actually a great agency. So I think it's the San Mateo, the Silicon Valley, and those guys were terrific. They were a great place of first resource. They understand the community. They understand the way to get things to happen and make them work. So they are, I think. And I think that idea of the San Mateo Event Center, for example, is bringing smaller venues there. I think it's underused. I think that there's inventory available, and it's really just a question of reaching out. It'll be interesting to see what happens first with the San Mateo City Council and its decision on its ice rink. And the Belmont ship has kind of sailed, so I'm still hopeful that we can find a place for these young children to enjoy grassroots sport.
But you did talk a little bit about a concept of having, some type of multi-sport facility. That doesn't take that much space. Now, if you wanted to add the indoor track, it might take more space, but to have a martial arts place, ice skating rink, other things, a swimming pool even, wouldn't take that much room, multi-story.
On acreage, so back when the 15 acres in Foster City was available and the charter school had come out, I had looked at that facility, and there were 4 acres available, 2 acres for parking and 2 acres for a building. So that gives you about a 70,000 square foot building. in that area, you can only imagine what you could put. You could put gymnastics in the center of it, 4 or 5 volleyball or basketball courts, make an atrium-style venue. On the side, have rooms for various types of sports, activities, and even workout areas. And then on the roof, actually have it turfed with artificial turf for soccer. So we had this fantastic plan. By the time we got to the city council, that particular council had its mindset on that becoming a senior citizens facility. And so there's other land in Foster City where that would be a great concept. Perhaps the golf course, there's 26 acres there. Werner Park would have been an interesting place to try to do that. And then there's one sliver of land left that's privately owned by Sam Runco, which is about 62 acres. But unfortunately, a lot of it's underwater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he is able, there's a lot of it that could be developed. So he had his heart set on a marina and commercial center. It would be interesting to see if there were if he had an interest in doing something that would both benefit the community and benefit himself.
So which directions do we look at moving forward here? And immediately, I guess there is the Bridgepoint decision that's on the horizon. And I'm not sure how we solve even that.
Well, the public has spoken. It's been very adamant. The Planning Commission for that city has spoken, and I think in a unanimous fashion about what they think. That promise that was made to that community by the developer who originally developed that did so knowing those entitlements. So the only question that remains is what the City Council of San Mateo will say when it hears its residents, and what's in the best interest of that. There are some creative solutions there, I think, with multi-level parking that would allow them to both maintain that facility or rebuild it and add additional recreational amenities for the community that they would love. That would be a great place not only to have that footprint for ice hockey or ice skating, but to add other things the community might care about, which might be acting classes for the children, and you could do those in rooms that surrounded that facility, and at the same time bring in Nordstrom's Rack. Right. Do we really need another Nordstrom's Rack when we have this whole Hillsdale project? Probably not. And is Nordstrom Rack going to be the salvation of Bridgepoint? Most definitely not.
Very good. Thank you. Coming up next, we will meet one of this year's San Mateo Peninsula Sports Hall of Fame inductees, Randy Metheany. We'll be right back. We welcome to the Sports Pen a member of the upcoming 2016 class of the Peninsula Sports Hall of Fame, inductee Randy Metheany. John, tell us a bit about the upcoming class, which will be inducted on June 8th.
Fred, it's a particularly good group. There's some emphasis on basketball, and that just happened by accident. It was not something we planned. There are 10 people. Jenny Circle is a good example of one of those people. Jenny is a 6'1" former center forward at Sacred Heart Prep down in Atherton. She played on a team that, in a program that was so dominant in California, they won 80 games in a row, and at one point, they had a record of 113-1. So we look at her as a great example of the fine female athletes who have been here. Another great softball player is Christy McCoy Helm. Randy knows a lot about her. He competed against her. Christy was at Aragon and then CSM. Then she went to Nebraska, became a terrific player at Nebraska, and she played some pro softball as well. And Randy can actually talk about her a little bit if he chooses. These last two fellas are both basketball players, Brian Thomason and Sid Williams, both of them outstanding.
Okay, thank you, John. And now we welcome to our panel Brandi Matheny, who's still coaching softball at Hillsdale. He's a member of the class of 1974 and has been involved with Hillsdale and coaching and teaching locally since that time. John, tell us a little bit more about Randy and introduce him here.
Well, Randy's middle name, I think, is loyalty to Hillsdale. I mean, he has given Hillsdale basically his entire coaching career. He played basketball there. So you can make an argument that for 45 45 years, roughly, Randy has been part and parcel of Hillsdale High School's athletic program. He coached basketball there for a very long time. His softball record is incredible, around 450 wins. He really is an icon at Hillsdale High School.
Randy, after I think it's a total of 550 wins with softball and basketball, what keeps you going?
The kids. The kids keep you going. The kids give you all the energy. The practices are the funnest time for me with the kids, because that's when I can teach and coach. Mm-hmm. The game's kind of the kids' deal. I might be part of it somewhat, but I've never really caught a ball, hit a ball, pitched a no-hitter or a perfect game, mm-hmm. and I never made a three-pointer to win a game. So it's always the kids. It's always about the kids and the players, for me anyway.
And you coached both sports. I think you last coached basketball about 2007, and then
yes.
came back in 2009 to resume softball. But going back a little bit further, I think the 1990-91 teams were some of the greatest teams ever to come out of this, and one of them was ranked #1 in the state by USA Today in 1990.
Correct. We had the Brady sisters.
The three Brady
Maureen
sisters.
Brady, Julie Brady, and Nancy Brady.
And there was a little boy that tagged along.
And the little boy was Tommy Brady. And he was about an 8-year-old. We'd play golf on the tournament weekends, myself, Tommy, and his father, which was quite fun. I haven't done that recently, but...
he became a pretty good football player, huh?
Yeah, he sure did. And his older sister, Maureen, was Player of the Year in 1990 in California, mm-hmm. the softball California State Player of the Year. And that was the year that we were honored as the #1 rated high school softball team in the state of California, which was nice because the coaches voted for it. So it wasn't like an opinion. All the coaches were polled in the state, and we actually, and the team that we lost to was on the trophy. They were 13th in the state. We were 32-1 that year. And then Maureen's senior year, she threw a perfect game in the CCS, her final game. She threw a perfect game. So quite an amazing group of girls. And she has this California State record, which is 116-9. And I would imagine that would not be broken just to the fact that they're limited to 27 games now, where I could usually get sometimes 32 or 33.
John, Randy's just one of the inductees, but you mentioned the names earlier, and you know several of them, Randy. I think
yes, I do. And John mentioned Christy is one of my favorite girls. Mm-hmm. She actually came over and played for our summer team, which was right around the time that softball was going from A level to gold. Mm-hmm. So we had a San Mateo team, and I had 4 or 5 Carmont girls, 4 Hillsdale girls, and 4 Aragon girls, and we went and competed. And what's interesting about Christy is she was a pitcher. She always was a pitcher, and a great pitcher. But I had her in practices in the summer, and I had her go in the cage and hit. She was just crushing the ball off the machine. And I said, "You'll be hitting this weekend." And that was the start of her career as an All-American in Nebraska, because then she went to Coach Martinez, who took her to another level from myself, mm-hmm. and she was crushing the ball up there, and then gets a 4-ride in Nebraska when she actually started as a pitcher. She was a monster hitter, and she's one of the sweetest girls I know.
And talking about people you sent to college at San Mateo, you have 2 sisters who are doing a pretty good job for the #1 community college softball team right now.
Yeah, they're coached pretty well by Nicole Borg, who I actually coached against when she was at Cappuccino, and Rai Wells and Megan Wells. They had played for me on varsity at Hillsdale for 4 years since they came to Hillsdale out of Foster City. And now they're playing together again at CSM. So I haven't seen them play yet because I've been busy, but I'll get up there.
Can you make an argument that in terms of girls' sports in the year 2016, along the peninsula, that softball probably is the best sport, the strongest sport?
I think, no question, John, if you just look at Carmont's program, Coach Liggett, and Hillsdale's program over the years, I think we have 4 CCS titles at Hillsdale, and I think Jim might have about 6.
And how many does Cappuccino have?
Cap has 2, I think.
I think at least, yeah.
That's pretty good for the PAL.
So you're talking about one girl, one female sport with maybe 12 CCS titles in 25 years.
That's impressive.
Because our public schools don't win many titles in other sports in the CCS.
That's true.
It's tough.
That is true. It's very hard in volleyball and basketball. Soccer, they've had a few in soccer.
Yeah, they've been a little bit more successful in soccer.
A little bit.
Softball, it's tougher because we get to the WCAL teams in the semis or finals, and
But you're
it's tough.
still really competitive with
totally.
even those private schools.
We're with them.
Yeah.
And they got a little bit different demographics than we do. We get a little clump of kids, and they get kids from everywhere. So we got to go after and get them, regardless of what the issue is.
Well, you also have good youth programs.
Yes.
You have where the kids start at 6, 7, 8 years old. We can argue about how young they should be, but still.
You're totally right, and Christy McCoy's in the Hall of Fame, and my girls, and that was totally funded by San Mateo Youth Softball Association.
There you go.
And we have a special game on Friday night at Chantelope as a fundraiser for their organization as a thank you from the Aragon Hillsdale softball program. So it's worked out great for the community.
On those nights when Hillsdale plays Aragon, roughly how many people are there? There's a lot of people
All
there.
the stands are full, side to side, and then there's people lined up on the outside fences in the outfield.
And parking's impossible.
Yeah, you can't park anywhere, right?
Well, that's a big surprise
And it's a
around here,
community thing.
right?
Yeah.
The parking,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Traffic,
Yeah.
hello. Man, oh man. But
those two basketball players, those Hall of Famers.
Oh yeah, you know them
Sid
too.
Williams and myself and my best friend Rod Williams.
Part of your class to be
We
inducted
played
in June.
together in our 20s, and I coached against Tomlinson, and he was just a Bud Bresnahan, 2-2-1 you to death, and they were just fantastic. Just terrific team, and he was a terrific player.
And Sid Williams was dynamite at Aragon and San Jose State.
He was a 6'7", 6'8" guy that could play 3 or 2.
Right.
There weren't many guys like that in those days.
That's right.
Yeah, it'd be great to bring all these people back together June 8th for another great class that you're going to have of the Hall of Fame. But we're not just talking about the past here. Obviously, you're pretty much up to date on what's going on currently. You've just witnessed, Randy, a great basketball season. You're not coaching, but you're still a astute observer, and pretty good Peninsula Athletic League and local basketball season. Maybe it's just a few comments on the PAL season that just finished.
Oh, there's some fantastic teams, and what's neat about the PAL that I've always enjoyed in my years and seeing the coaches now, because the head coach at Hillsdale High School played for myself and Coach Wilkin. So he's a Hillsdale boy. He's a Hillsdale grown kid. And all of the coaches in the PAL are outstanding. You're not going to outcoach the other guy. Either your kids are going to beat them because they're athletically better, because every coach is very well trained and a very good coach and does a great job for high school basketball. I would think the MA basketball team in the Open Division tournament should have a pretty good shot. It'd be kind of neat if they could maybe get a chance to play Sarah, because it's a local thing, and we always like local things.
Yes, we do.
But they've done well, and hopefully they'll do well in the CCS and have fun.
And good end to the season. You want to mention our local champions and what you observed, because your Hillsdale teams are right in there too.
Right.
After the season, going into CCS, but they all had a good season.
Oh, Aragon and Hillsdale had good games, and like I said, every one of those games are pretty competitive. For example, Burlingame High School is one of the top-ranked teams, and Hillsdale upset them in the league game. That's kind of the fun of the PAL, I think, that you can play a real good game and maybe beat a team that probably normally would beat you. That's the part of high school basketball that's exciting.
And we also have a top WCAL team in Sarah that's very competitive.
Coached by a Hall of Famer, Chuck Rapp. So that kind of explains it right there. He's a pretty darn good coach.
Very good. Anyway, stay with us, and we'll be right back with more Sports Pen. Welcome back to the Sports Pen. And John, you have a few more thoughts on sports opportunities here on the Peninsula.
I just wanted to make sure that that focusing on the past is great, but focusing on the present is even greater because there's so much going on the peninsula. Stanford University has the best overall athletic program in the nation, and it's been that way for over 20 years.
Yeah, they win the All Sports Award every
Yes.
year for NCAA excellence.
Some of the most dramatic surfing is held outside of Half Moon Bay, outside of Pillar Point at Mavericks. We have state caliber junior college and high school athletes and programs. We are so fortunate here that it always strikes me as, I'll speak for myself, I'm spoiled here. I truly am. This is an amazing place to be.
And Randy, actually, you have one of the sports we can go watch right now with your
Softball
team,
season
among other
is
things.
right down the road, and we're in it. We open up next week. So we're looking forward to our season, and we're just working on the softball field, practicing now. And I just want to take a little time to thank the committee and the Hall of Fame. And John's been a good friend of mine for years, and thanks for honoring us. We appreciate it.
Well, it's going to be great to have you as a member of this incoming class of the Sports Hall of Fame. And John, we got you have one more plug for that.
Well, it's June 8th. It's at Green Hills Country Club in Millbrae, and we're looking forward to it.
Yep.
Very good. And we welcome and appreciate the fact that you were able to be with us today, Randy. And John, thank you for sharing the panel with me today. And for myself and John, we'll see you next time on the Sports Pen.